Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If you're new to the channel, my name's Tim and this is Vehicle Evolution. Today we're going to go over something pretty cool for the Wrangler involving its lighting upgrade, and something that most of you are probably going to have to deal with at some point in your off-roading adventures is going to be switches for your auxiliary lighting. If you're new to off-roading or you've been into off-roading for a while, you know that you're going to need extra lighting on your vehicle, whether it's a Wrangler or a truck or whatever your off-roading vehicle of choice is. You're going to need lighting, and to run that, rather than having all these little switches inside the dash in various places, having your switches in one central switch bank is going to be a huge advantage, not only for the cleanliness of your interior, but just ease of operation. So if you watched my last video, you'll know that on this Wrangler, we have the rough country 6-switch setup on this one that I installed in my last video, and it's been great. It has a control box that's mounted right underneath the hood that makes hooking it up easy, and it's got 6 switches that go right underneath of the window switches in that empty bin if you have a stock JL Wrangler. So if I already have a 6-switch switch bank, why am I making this video? What's the whole point? Well, I'm very happy to announce that today's video has been sponsored by Lasfit. Lasfit is a manufacturer of premium auto LED lighting, and they just happened to make a switch bank setup for the JL Wrangler. And it's not like most of the switch banks where it's just individual switches. This setup is actually designed to complement the interior with OEM quality look and finish. So in one box should be the right control bank, in the other box should be the left control bank, and let's see what they look like. All right, so let's take a look here. Wow. It's definitely impressive packaging for sure. This is going to be the right side, and you'll see that these things are individually labeled. So I have labels already for front lights, side lights, spotlights, and a roof light. Let's see what's underneath of here. So underneath of here we've got some zip ties, and we've got our whole wiring harness set up with a relay box and our mounting bracket. And we're going to put this aside for a second, and we're going to see what is in box number 2. And then box number 2, oh yeah. So as you'll see here, this is the same coloring that you would normally get from the sway bar disconnect and the lockers on the Rubicon, which is pretty cool. Only on here, we've got our buttons for our air lockers if we wanted to use that. We have our button for air compressor, which this Wrangler is going to have an onboard air compressor setup. And then we can also switch between our main fuel tank and our auxiliary fuel tank if that's installed, which that one will probably be installed at some point as well. But what's neat about this setup, not only is it very cool looking, so in this box we should have the same stuff. So we get our switch bank, which is awesome, and then we get another relay box with harness, and then we get a different mounting plate, and I'll explain why. Now so far the only thing that I'm not seeing in the boxes is an instruction manual. But they have a really good video on their YouTube channel on how to install these, and I've watched it actually a couple times, and it's very intuitive. And this video that I'm doing is actually going to be an install video as well, so you're going to be able to see step by step how to install this on your JL Wrangler. But let's take a little bit closer look here. So something that's cool is that you don't have to buy the entire set. You can buy just the one side or that side, depending on what your Wrangler came with. If you already have the sway bar disconnect set up on yours, and then this side is just an empty like cubby hole, you can buy just this one side. And same thing for the other. You don't have to buy the whole set. Now they were cool enough to send me the entire set, which is pretty awesome. And we're going to install this whole thing, and it's going to give the interior of this Wrangler a more OEM look, but also make hooking up auxiliary lighting and a lot more auxiliary lighting to this Wrangler so much easier. And let me go over, before we get into the actual install, some differences between this setup and the rough country setup that I already have. So for the rough country setup, we have our control box mounted underneath the hood, and it's actually in a really nice space. It's easy to get to, it's easy to wire in. It's just running through the firewall and then going over to the battery to hook up. So it's very simple. Everything is in one place. So when we undo this, we have all of our hookups right here. It's just a matter of plugging into which switch you want to use. Right now we only have the switch set up for the light that's on the bumper, and then we've got 5 more ports here for whichever switches we want to do in the future. So having the relay box mounted like that is good and bad. It's good because it makes it easy to get to. It's bad because it's not watertight, and some of us like to play in the water. And if you get any water up over into that hood, you risk shorting out that box, which could potentially be a big problem. Now the Lasfit setup works a little bit differently. It doesn't have the hookup positions in there that are as easy to get to. All the wires are going to be coming out. The whole box is going to be sealed, and then you just make your connections and seal your connections with shrink tubing or whatever you want to use to make sure that your connections are watertight, and then tuck them somewhere where hopefully they're not going to get hit by water. But the box itself, the relay box, is all sealed and all watertight, which makes it a much better install. The other thing that you get with Lasfit is you get 8 positions instead of just 6, which you know, that's 2 more positions, and lighting's lighting, and we all like more lighting, so you can't go wrong with an extra 2 positions. The neat thing too is that the boxes are set up on different parts of the Wrangler. So one of the control boxes is going to be mounted over here next to the battery, and then the wire will go over there and then through the firewall. The other box will go right here, and then the wires will also go through the firewall and then be hooked up on the interior. So it's going to be a pretty clean installation. Let's take a quick look at the first box and the harness. Now this is the harness that's going to go inside behind the actual control panel itself. This is a new rubber grommet that will replace the one that's down in there to make sure that everything stays watertight. And then this is the actual relay box that everything gets hooked into. So we've got our power cables here, ground cables, and then we have everything individually marked for spotlight, roof, front, side, and then corresponding over on this side as well. So it makes hooking it up should be a breeze. For whatever you're not going to use, just leave the caps in place until you need them, and then you'll be able to pull that off and wire your new light right into it. But yeah, I'm pretty impressed with the construction. It's very well sealed, and yeah, this ought to be pretty cool. So here are the rough country switches, and don't get me wrong, they are nice. They were easy to install, and they work very well. The only problem is they're difficult to see when it's dark out because it's all black, and when they're on, they do light up, which is fine. But unless you're going to take a label maker, which is going to look pretty cheesy, none of these are labeled, which means you have to remember exactly where you hooked everything up. And if you're anything like me, you're probably not going to remember. And if somebody else is driving your Wrangler, they're not going to know what switch goes to what, and they're just going to be flipping switches on and off, seeing what works. So having them labeled right on the button with the Lasfit setup is going to be a big advantage. So let's stop talking and going over this stuff, and we're going to get right into the installation. So to get started, you're going to need either a 3/8 inch ratchet or a 1/4 inch ratchet with an extender for each one, a 5.5 millimeter socket, a 7 millimeter socket, a 10 millimeter socket, some pliers, a trim removal tool, and a Phillips head screwdriver. And this should be all we need to get this project done. In each box, you're going to get a relay module. Each one of them is marked for what they're going to be hooked up to. So this one is the spot, side, roof, and front hookup. This is going to be for our actual lighting. This is the one for the air and the fuel tank and all that stuff. So the first thing we're going to have to do is fasten the supplied bracket to each box, which is pretty much just using the supplied screws to attach the bracket to the box. So this is pretty simple. We've got the 2 mounting points here and the 2 mounting points here. And this is going to go like so that this bottom piece is facing downward. So now we have the bracket installed, and we're just going to do the same thing to the other side. So at this point, you want to make sure you disconnect your negative battery terminal. So the first box is going to go over here. We're going to take this one bolt off, and we're going to set this in place like this, and then they supply a replacement bolt to go into this hole. So we're going to use our 10 millimeter socket to remove this bolt. Then we're going to slide this in here like so. We're going to replace this bolt, and we're going to leave it a little loose for right now until we get this other one in. We'll make sure that's good and tight. Now this is where this box is going to sit. And now we have our ground wire, which we're going to mount to this nut right here. So we're going to attach our ground wire here. So we have our ground wire here, so we're going to take our positive wires and attach it to the battery terminal. So we're going to hook our positive to this lead here. Make sure you don't over tighten them or you're going to strip it off. So that pretty much installs the box. So we're going to leave these wires right here because that's where all of our components are going to hook into. And then we're going to take this long wire and feed it around through the back of the engine compartment over to the other side where we will put it through the firewall. So you're going to feed the wire through here. You can either take these two bolts off and remove the coolant reservoir to get it behind it, or you can try to snake it through the backside. I think I'm going to try to snake it through the backside so I don't have to take this off. And then we're going to just put the cord through the hole in the firewall down there where I showed you where the other one was. There's a plug down here that just pops out, and they give you a replacement plug to put in place for when everything's through and you have everything set. So it is actually going to be easier if we remove this. So we're going to just take this off. It's two 10mm nuts and it'll pop right off. And we'll pop that off gentle-like and just feed this in behind it. And then we're going to replace it back. So now we have all the wiring in place over here. So now we're going to put the other box in place right here. So for this one, we're going to remove this nut, and they actually give us a replacement nut for over here. I'm just going to pop that right there, put that back on, and the replacement nut here. Again, make sure you don't over tighten these because you don't want to strip anything. So next up, we're going to take the ground wire right here and we're going to attach it to this bolt here. So we're just going to pull this off, attach the wire, and then we're going to run the positive cable back through the back side of the engine compartment over to the battery. And I probably should have done that before I put the coolant reservoir back in, so we'll take that off and run this behind there, and that should make it a nice clean installation. We're going to tuck it up under here so it's not pulling down on this. So for this one, we're actually going to attach it over here. This other lead's getting pretty full. This is actually my main power cable to my winch, so not a lot of room here, so we're going to attach it over to this other side. So we're going to run it over to this lead. This is actually going to be a 12mm nut instead of the 10mm nut like the other side. So we're going to go grab a 12mm socket and get this hooked up. And so we're actually going to come up around down under here so we can stay under cover since we don't want this exposed, and tighten that down. Okay, so with everything hooked up there, we can replace our cover. So we have a whole bunch of extra cable here, but we'll use our zip ties since they supply you with a whole bunch of zip ties, and we will neaten this up. So now the outside stuff is done, let's move on to the inside. So all we're going to do is we're going to take off all these screws that are back here. So now that we have everything taken apart, we just need to feed the wires in, and the wires are going to come in right up there through that hole, and we'll be able to get everything hooked up. So we need to use one of the grommets that they sent us, and it's hold on one side and closed up on the other. So we're just going to need to use our X-Acto knife and open up this other side. Okay, so once we have it cut out, we just need to feed our wires through it. So if you have both boxes and you're using the kit that supplies both relay boxes, you're going to have to feed both of these wires through, and they look pretty similar. So you're going to want to do something to mark one of them so that when you feed it through, you know which side it goes to. So now we have both switch leads into the footwell. So let's get the switch modules installed so we can run the remainder of the harnesses up through the dash of the Jeep. So let's start with the red module. It's going to go over on this side here. If you didn't get the red module, you're just going to have the black switch bank that will go over here, and then this area over here is just going to be a empty space or little cubby. But we're going to sit this in here like so, and we're going to take the second side and put it over here, and then we just replace all of our screws. All right. So there it is installed. This thing looks pretty sick. So I've got switches for my front and rear lockers. I've got a switch for air, my fuel tank. Over here, my side light, spotlight, roof light, and front light. And then in the middle I have a jack for a CB radio. So now it's time to install this into the dash, and we've got to do all of the wiring back here now. So remember, our leads to the relay boxes are underneath of the steering wheel. So all of these wires that are here right now are all of the ones that were here from pulling the factory switch panel out. So on the back here, you've got two white plugs that look the same. So if you're only doing one side, you'll have a harness that looks like this. You're going to find your cigarette lighter adapter or your auxiliary port adapter, which is the blue and gray one. You can't mess it up because it can only fit in one way. You're going to plug this in here, and then this part is going to plug into the back of the cigarette lighter. And so each one of your switch boxes comes with a cable that looks like this. This is the piece that plugs into the switch, and then this is the piece that plugs into that other white port that was on the harness that you plugged into the cigarette lighter. And then this long piece is the piece that's going to go all the way over to underneath the steering wheel where the relay box wires come in. Now if you have the set like what I have, where you have the full set that has both sides, you're going to have a different harness. The only difference is now you have two port connectors here, and then you have this box that I can't even pretend to know what it is. It might be a little speaker, it might be a relay, it could be, who knows. But you're going to do the same thing. This port's going to plug into where your cigarette lighter cable is, and this piece right here is going to plug into the back cigarette lighter of the control panel. So I'm going to leave this alone for just a minute. We've got these cables here, so we have two of them, and one is going to be connecting on one side here, and then the other is going to connect on the other side right here. So you have two identical wires coming out. These we're going to keep off to the side right now. These are the ones that we're concerned with. These are the ones that are going to plug into the harness that we just plugged into our dash. So it doesn't matter which side goes where, since this is pretty much just for power. This gray piece is going to go into the cigarette lighter, just like we were saying before. And that pretty much gives you all of the wiring that you need to be able to make this whole thing work. So all I have to do here is hook up all of the factory wiring back to the right ports. And again, you can't really mess this up since each of the ports is a unique plug. So we're going to do that real quick. So I'm going to feed these wires through one at a time and make sure that I'm hooking them up to the right relay box. And then we'll get this mounted back in place and get this all put back together. When you hook these up too, you want to make sure that you're staying away from all of your pedals and you don't have anything looped around there to mess things up. I'll feed the other wire through. Now all we got to do is tuck everything back in here. And we've got our one screw that needs to go in there, and we'll replace our control unit here. Well, that looks so much better. So let's get the battery hooked back up and we will make sure that this all works. So up here, all we have to do is run one of our wires from our lights to whichever switch we want it to go to. So in this case, the bumper light is going to be hooked up to our front switch, and then the other wire to the ground. And that is it. So now I got to do is tidy this up, which is pretty much just some zip ties and tucking, and then we'll be ready to go. That's the install on the Lasfit Switch Bank. I think it is awesome. I think it is easy to install. It's very intuitive to work. Couple little things with just hooking wiring that was a little confusing, but hope this video helps you if you bought one of these or are going to buy one of these. Speaking of which, you can go online to lasfit.com and use my promo code Vehicle Evolution and get 10% off your entire order. Not just for the switch bank, you could pick up some LED bulbs or anything else that you want. Get 10% off your entire order. Again, lasfit.com, use promo code Vehicle Evolution. I will link them in the description below. I would like to give a huge thanks to them for sponsoring this video and allowing me to share this with you guys and do the install. I think you would really like it if you had something like this in yours, especially if you've got a base JL like I have that didn't come with any of this. So now I've got 8 spots to put my lights, my air compressor, you name it, I can add it into here, and it's super simple to just wire into the relay boxes that are under the hood now. So no ugly wiring, nice, clean, perfect install. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. But that's all for me for now, guys. Until next time, take it easy.